Hello, everybody out there. Welcome to Tea with Me, the podcast where we have a great time talking about all sorts of things, and it might not really make much sense. I invite you to get a cup of tea, to sit down. It's the first fire of the year here. Today is Monday, October 7th. Normally, I'm an astrologer. My name is Sarah, for those of you who don't know me. And I would be talking with you about the stars and the movements and the planets, but to be honest, I need a little bit of a rest. So maybe we'll just start talking about nature and about the world outside and the changing seasons. We have Samhain coming up, which is the new year in the Celtic and pagan traditions. It's the thinning of the veils. It's the thinning of the veils with the world of the dead, as opposed to May Day, which comes on the 1st of May, or Beltane, which is the thinning of the veils with the world of the Fae or the fairies. So here we're coming close to the time where we can commune with our ancestors. We can always commune with our ancestors, as I'm sure that anyone listening probably knows. But I don't want to make assumptions like that. What are some ways? Maybe that's a good way for us to start here. So just call in our ancestors, thinking about times that they've sat in front of the fire, times that they've drank some tea, times that they've had conversations, times that they've been thinking about what they want in the world, how they want to live, who they want to be. One questions that come up for me a lot. Hmm. Hmm. The washing machine just stopped. It's one of those really great things. I used to work on a commercial fishing boat, actually. And one of the things that I remember sharing, talking about with the people I worked with was there'd always be these like huge diesel engines going. And it would just be this loud vibration all day. And I didn't work on a boat where you'd sleep and really like go out into the ocean, but I'd be gone like 11, 12 hours. Mm. And you just feel this like it must be the same for like truckers, but you just feel this like intense big diesel engine like all day. And you kind of just adjust to it. I mean, everything is a little bit loud, but it's what you're doing, working with all this metal. And at the end of the day, you get in, you have to unload, and even unloading, you have to have the engine on. And then that feeling at the very end where the engine goes off and the quiet, I guess maybe that's part of what I want to bring to this experience that we're having here with each other. It's like, it's not just the washing machine or the refrigerator buzzing, or if you work on a commercial fishing boat, or if you're a trucker, or when you're actually driving a car. Some people have really quiet cars these days. It's like that feeling of buzzing in your brain, like, I've got to get something done, I've got to be somewhere, got to do something, all the to-dos. I like that feeling of just turning the engine off for a minute. And let's take a pause. Have tea with me. a really good time astrologically to talk about this pause, because speaking of like big buzzing, Jupiter's been direct in Gemini, and Gemini can be very buzzy. I mean, it's an air sign, it's a very mental sign, it's the sign of the twins, and Jupiter makes things really big and um and is really, people say, in detriment. Um, but Jupiter can be like a lot of buzzing, and it can feel hard in Gemini. And on Wednesday, Jupiter is going to go retrograde in Gemini. So it's going to appear in the sky as if Jupiter is moving backwards, though, of course, it's not. It's moving forwards. It's just the way that it lines up. Um, Being one of those outer planets and how the cycles look, it appears to be traveling backwards. And so as Jupiter does a retrograde, it's a time for us to kind of rethink, but it's also maybe a time for that engine of our mind and of that thinking of like, I have to do, I have to do, I have to communicate, I have to talk, I have to think, and how am I going to put all these things together? It's like putting the brakes on, turning off the engine for a minute. And so as we approach Jupiter coming into retrograde, maybe we can already feel a bit of that pulling back. Don't need to be so big. We don't need to be rushing in so many directions. It may be a time when we can feel a little bit more focus, a little more clarity. Meanwhile, Pluto's going to be moving direct. And so Pluto is at the last degree of Capricorn. Now, Capricorn, very different than Gemini, where Gemini is an air sign and can be a bit playful and is about how do we put all of these different things together. Gemini loves writing, Gemini loves communicating, Gemini is ruled by Mercury, the trickster god. Capricorn is ruled by Saturn, the god of time, the god of boundaries, the last visible planet in the solar system. We have the outer planets, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, trans-Plutonian objects. But Saturn, for a long time, before we had all of these high-powered telescopes, it was the edge of what humans could see. And so it really represents like the boundaries of our body, the place where, we, who we are, merges then beyond Saturn with the larger, the collective, those outer planets. And so Capricorn, being ruled by Saturn, is really about boundaries, is about structure, is about systems, tradition. Definitely the government kind of falls into Capricorn. And it's interesting because Pluto went into Capricorn in 2008, which is the year that Obama got elected. And Pluto is still going to be in Capricorn this upcoming election, though Pluto is going to be almost in Aquarius. Now, we felt Pluto like dip into Aquarius a couple times over the last few years, but then retrograded back into Capricorn, sign of boundaries, sign of structure, sign of, it's really the sea goat, but mountain goat, right? It's like the mountain climber. A lot of times Saturn has to do with periods of, or Saturn and Capricorn have to do with periods of solitude, hard tasks that have actually like very concrete material results. And so Pluto, god of the underworld, transformation, alchemical fire, has been traveling through this sign since 2008 and will move into Aquarius for the next 20 years on November 19th. And so as Jupiter is going to do a retrograde, and that happens much more frequently. I mean, Jupiter has a 12-year cycle. And so Jupiter is really only in each sign for about a year. And then, but Pluto has a 266-year cycle. And so Pluto, it's a highly elliptical orbit. And so, for instance, when Pluto was in Scorpio, the sign of its rulership, Pluto was only in Scorpio for 12 years. But then in some of the signs, like for example, when Pluto gets into the opposite, into Taurus, it's going to be much longer. And it's going to be in Aquarius for 20 years. And as we age, Pluto is going to be in this part of its cycle, spending more time in each sign. So as we near Pluto coming into Aquarius, and won't dip back into Capricorn, and it will be the last time in any of our lives with 266-year cycle, unless we figure out some way to really extend dramatically the human lifespan, which quite frankly, I'd rather we don't. I guess, I don't know. I mean, I know that there's some mythic creatures who live to be 300 years, and I could see maybe it would be quite pleasurable, but um, I think sticking with the human lifespan is probably best. Total non sequitur. Anyway, mm, so as we're finishing up this time of Pluto and Capricorn, it's time to really take stock and reflect. What have been the big changes in terms of structure, boundaries that have come up in our individual lives and really collectively, because this is a collective planet. It's way out there past Saturn. Um, and really probably doing some big transformation, shaking up. It's like compost, turning over of that sense of individual boundary and self, and really what it means to be a human, what it means to be an autonomous individual inside of structures. We all remember 2020 when Pluto and Saturn conjunct in Capricorn. And so, these are some of the lessons that are going to be, Pluto, it gets a really bad rap, but alchemy really is about turning straw into gold. And so, where is the gold in that? And I think as we move into Aquarius, the sign of individuality, the future, hopes and dreams, um, part of what we can take and build on from Pluto being in Capricorn is how to really have ownership and autonomy for ourselves as individuals. Capricorn is about power. It's where we often give over our power, and Saturn as well. And so Pluto asks us, reclaim your power. We've gone to the underworld. We've seen the places where structures don't work. And so how do we take that into our own selves and become, are you familiar with the myth of Anana and Ereshkigal? It's a really wonderful underworld myth, and I've told it so many times to so many people. Um, basic, simple overview of that myth is Anana, queen of heaven and earth. She's often associated with Venus, descends into the underworld. She goes through several gates. At each gate, the gatekeeper asks her to remove an article of clothing. So she has this beautiful crown. She takes off her crown. She has a scepter. She loses her scepter. She has the breastplate. At one of the gates, she loses the breastplate. And she's going down, and she's going to meet her sister, who is the queen of the underworld, Ereshkigal. Now, Ereshkigal meets Anana. Anana comes down and she's totally naked and she's groveling, and Ereshkigal looks at her, and she looks at her with a look of so much hatred. So let's just take a pause there. Because there's something that I think is really interesting. It's like, here is Anana. She's like the popular pretty girl in school. She's absolutely beautiful. She's Venus. I mean, she's queen of heaven and earth. She's Anana. And here is Ereshkigal. And Ereshkigal is like that part of us that wants, that it is totally unsatisfied. That's the underworld. That's like all of the guilt and the shame and all of the things that we're like, oh, I feel really awful about that. Oh, I'm like not beautiful. And so here is Anana. And yes, she is absolutely vulnerable. She has just removed all of her garments of power and is naked, and she's groveling, and Ereshkigal, full of jealousy, anger, hatred, looks at her, kills her. So now Anana's dead. Ereshkigal hangs her on the meat hook on the wall. And Anana was really brilliant. Before she went down, she told her friend Ninshibur. And she's like, Ninshibur, I'm going to the underworld. And please, if I don't come back in like 3, 30, 60, 180, whatever version of the myth you're looking at, please go and get help. Good friends are really important to have. Ninshibur, after whatever amount of time, realizes Anana's not coming back in the poor little tea. She goes to several gods. No, we're not going to help you. Anana should never have gone there. She should never have descended into the underworld. We're not going to help you. Have you ever experienced that? I have. You should not have descended into the underworld. You are at fault for where you are now. Sorry, we cannot help her. Sorry, we cannot help her. And then finally, she goes to the river god Enki. And Enki, which is interesting, it's water, right? And I think right now we are in this really beautiful grand trine of water, which includes Saturn and Pisces. And so we've got Saturn, Venus, and Mars all in water signs. And so this is this emotional time. And here's Enki, the god of the rivers. He has this emotional understanding. And he's like, oh, Anana, my daughter, yes, yes, I want to help her. That's that compassion, that understanding. Yes, she went to the underworld. Yeah, we all go to the underworld. Who hasn't gone to the underworld? And by the way, if you're telling me that I shouldn't have gone to the underworld, maybe there's something you need to unpack about your own journey to the underworld. It's called projection. And so Enki, he like, see what I'm doing? I'm getting under my fingernail with the other fingernail, and he's got some dirt under there. And he takes that dirt and he molds it into these two little homunculus figures. He sends them down and they go down through the gates, which makes me think of Mercury. Because in the myth of Persephone, it is Mercury who descends into the underworld to bring Persephone back up for her mother Demeter, which creates the seasons. In that myth, again, Hades, again, descent into the underworld. And so we're talking about Pluto here. And these are myths that give us the archetype of Pluto. And so the two little homunculus figures descend into the underworld where they see Ereshkigal. And Ereshkigal is sitting there and she's in so much pain. And she's rocking back and forth. Oh, my belly. Oh, my back. Oh, my back. It's like labor. It's labor. It's the pain of labor. Oh, my belly. Oh, my back. And the two little figures see her and they mirror it. Oh, my belly. Oh, my back. Oh, my belly. And this is sort of one of those ways for working with Pluto, ways for working with the underworld, ways for working with transformation, ways for working with things that are really fucking hard, is no judgment, witnessing. A really wonderful, amazing teacher friend of mine, Donna Riley, told me about the 45-degree view. And it's like, all right, here's me down here, Sarah. I'm trying to give a little talk. And I'm watching it from up here. And I'm like, oh, this is the part where Sarah gives a talk. And she tries to talk to people on the internet. And she's really uncomfortable because she's not very good at talking. But, okay, that's judgment, not Pluto. Anyway, they mirror her. And she feels so grateful. It's like, ah, you saw me. You didn't judge me. What can I give you? I'll give you anything. And they see Anana and she's hanging on that meat hook on the wall. Ugh, I know that feeling. And they say, we just want Anana. She's like, oh yeah, that whole thing, take it. So they bring Anana up. And this is the other part of the descent. And I think as Pluto is coming out of Capricorn, you know, there's so much, we are really excited for Pluto to be in Aquarius. It's like dawning of the age of Aquarius. We're not going to be in Capricorn anymore. It's going to be some totally different transformation of like communities, transformation of how we imagine the future for our children, transformation of technology. All of these transformations are coming in. Yeah, we love the future. We love thinking about the future. And it's really important to honor that homecoming, that Persephone leaving the underworld. And I say this as we're coming towards Samhain, as we're coming towards the time when we think of the descent beginning. You know, we're moving into the winter solstice if you live in the Northern Hemisphere. And these myths and these stories are happening in different cycles all the time simultaneously. Literally every moon cycle, as we come to the new moon, we're coming from the full moon into the new moon. There's like a return. And then we come to the new moon, it's the new birth, and we're coming towards the largeness, the fullness of becoming. And so here we have this Pluto cycle, and the Pluto cycle is ending in Capricorn. And Pluto is going direct. Let's tell you exactly what day. Pluto goes direct on Friday, the 11th. And we're going to feel, the end of this time of Pluto being in Capricorn, which again began back in 2008. And so what is Anana, resurfaces, she comes back, she's queen of heaven and earth. And as Persephone, was a maiden when she descended into the underworld, whether abducted or by choice, to become the queen of the underworld and consort to Hades. These transformations that happen through pain, through destruction, through loss, surrender, these transformations really bring us to a place of wisdom, of power, of much more complexity and depth. And so what is the wisdom, the power, the complexity, and the depth that we can claim and that we can find ourselves in connection with as we end this Pluto and Capricorn cycle? And I think when Pluto does this last bit of direct thing, it's a really good time to tune in with that. And especially, woohoo, we're doing it right as this election comes up. So whatever happens from this is a time to take stock in what is our relationship to systems of power. How do we participate in it? How do we choose not to participate in it? How is the power reclaimed within each one of us? So again, on Wednesday, Jupiter is going to go retrograde. It might be a bit of a calming of the mind. We don't have to be expanding into 1,000 different directions. And as we approach Samhain, as we approach that descent into the underworld towards the winter solstice, it might help to give us a little bit of focus into what kind of crystallization is going to happen in that descent into the underworld that is the winter. And as Pluto moves into Aquarius, and we begin to think about things like, yeah, what do we want for the future? What do we want for our children? What systems have we transformed over the last 16 years? And then how, as a result of those transformations, can we move forward into a different future that we hadn't imagined previously? So that's it for Tea with Me. Blessings on you. I'll talk with you again. Goodbye.